It's kind of like this accepted convention in comedy that when you're telling a story or something like that, some details might be a little bit exaggerated, you know, little bits and bobs might be fictionalised, liberties might be taken with the truth for the sake of comic effect. And before I start, I do just want to take this opportunity to state categorically that everything I'm about to say is, to the best of my knowledge and my limited inclination to do any real research, true. It's all true. So, William Thomas Jordan is a small, active, predatory mammal, long and slender with short legs, varying in length from 12 to 45 centimetres, and usually having a red or brown upper coat with a white belly. Now, you may have noticed that some of that wasn't true. What I've actually done there is quote some words from the Wikipedia page on the Mustela erminea, or short-tailed weasel. But that is a forgivable lie, because for about the decade and a half that I've known this creature sat before you today, his name has been Weazal. That's what everyone calls him. His name is Weazal. I know what you're thinking, why would you give a rodent's name to somebody who is at least legally human? Is it because you see him as vermin, kin only to the pigeon and the rat? No, I'm not that cruel. Is it because of his, you know, reputation for cunning and guile? Clearly not. No, the real reason why it's called Weazal, well, there's a short version and there's a long version. The short version is because he looks like a weasel, eats like a weasel, acts like a weasel, and smells like a weasel. So, to be honest with you, the name kind of wrote itself. The long version, as you'd expect, takes a little bit more explaining, and I have to throw you all the way back to last century, 1999, if you're going to be precise about it. And Weazal and I, we shared a house together for many years. Imagine the scene. It's a grand, lovely old Victorian townhouse that unfortunately has been infested by this feckless, smelly dropout who's obsessed with computer games and has no real prospect of any, you know, gainful employment. And that unfortunately was me. He was there as well. We used to spend our days leaning out of these wonderful, huge windows, shouting helpful things to passers-by, like, I don't know, England have taken a wicket, or the Queen Mum is dead, or I can see your pants from here. And Weazal would spend his nights sleeping in a room that could charitably be described as a cross between a sort of car boot sale and the firebombing of Dresden. And I would spend my nights painstakingly bricking him into his bed with the hundreds of empty milk cartons that he left laying around the house. So that's the scene. And Weazal and I are leaving this house early one morning, a wintry morning, much like today, and we're both pulling on our big, thick, woolly winter coats, and Weazal reaches into the pocket of his coat and pulls out half a sausage. Looks at half a sausage and says, "Ooh, I forgot about that sausage," and then eats the sausage. Now let's analyse this as rational adult human beings for a second. Firstly, what kind of man finds himself at a function that requires an outdoor winter coat, but where the sausages are served without bread or pastry, thus negating any chance of portability? What kind of chili barbecue does this man find himself at? Secondly, what kind of man gets halfway through the aforementioned sausage and then goes, "I've bitten off more than I can chew here"? Quite literally, I have been defeated by a sausage. Thirdly, what kind of man thinks the pocket of an outdoor jacket is an acceptable vessel for the conveyance or storage of a half-eaten meat product? Fourthly, what kind of man keeps that aforementioned cooked offal tube in his pocket for long enough to forget about it? Fifthly, this goes on. I've got about 45 minutes of this. We'll get to Sharon and we're done. Fifthly, what kind of man then reaches into his pocket and pulls out a cold, greasy, lint-encrusted, tobacco-stained cylinder of pig's guts and thinks that is an acceptable mid-morning snack. And finally, and this is the one that gets me more than any of the others, what kind of man is so excited by this prospect that he has no choice but to start the sentence with the word ooh? Clearly, the answer, of course, is a horrible, fearsome, omnivorous weasel human hybrid with the culture and sophistication of a trilobite. I don't really actually think I need to say any more. That kind of sums up this man for as long as I have known him. But I am running a little bit short, so I've got a few minutes to kill, so let's play a game of 10 random facts about Weazal. Number one, Weazal can actually drink a pint of Guinness in less than 2.5 seconds. That's true, isn't it? That's true. Yeah. I've seen Don't try it now. He's got a wedding night to go to. Number two, for those of you who don't know, Weazal was in the Navy for like 10 years.
No way.
He was. For the first Gulf War, Weazal was part of the only unit on Iraqi soil that wasn't allowed guns. Yeah. He's allowed to repair a multi-million-pound jet fighter, but he's not allowed to defend himself because he'll probably end up hurting himself. Weazal, as you'd expect from a sailor, drank pretty much during that time anything he could get his hands on, up to and including Brasso filtered through bread. There is a song about sailors and what to do with them. I think he was probably the inspiration for that. This table here will definitely witness this fact that Weazal can fit 54 Maltesers into his bag without chewing them or swallowing them. There are photographs on Facebook. I heartily suggest you all look it up. He does, however, look like he's been eating. Well, there's children here, so I won't say what it looks like he's been doing. Weazal also, for many years, carried around a photograph of his own. Actually, there's children here, so I won't put that out. Weazal boxed while he was in the Navy, which a lot of people don't know. Weazal actually was a boxer during his time in the Navy, and he ended his career with what I think is quite a respectable record of 2 wins and 2 losses. And presumably everyone who knows Weazal from the gym here going, 2 wins? For a guy who looks like he'd snap in half if you breathed at him in a violent way. Yeah, not too bad. But that does lead us nicely on to number 4, I think I'm down to. Number 4, Weazal is actually bionic. If you don't believe me, after I've finished my speech, come up here and just run your finger down the front of his shin. He's had more injuries than Darren Anderton and Darren Eadie and Michael Owen put together, and he's still breathing. That's right. That, I am told, is a football joke. Got to put one in for the football fans, or they take their ball and, you know. Number 3, Weazal's versatile hair, which I'm sorry he's tied it back today, but I wish you could all see it. Weazal's versatile hair can actually be woven into car seat belts, bulletproof jackets, and if ironed, will make an acceptable substitute for reinforced steel girders. I know I had to cut it for about 6 years. Number 2, if Weazal were ever to stop drinking milk, even for a day, the resultant milk surplus would be big enough to drown David Cameron. Hint, hint. One day. And finally, number 1, he won those 2 fights in the Navy because the other guy didn't show up. That's the only reason he won 2 boxing matches. The other guy didn't show up. did the next part because I kind of didn't want it to sound insincere, but that basically gives you an idea of what my relationship or my friend's relationship with Weazal has been for about the last 10 years or so. He's been dependable in that you can depend on him to be childlike, childish, weird, and omnivorous. But he was always there, and he was always very, very entertaining for especially those of us who like certain types of herbal remedies and so on and so forth. But for about the last sort of 10, 12 months, he stopped being dependable. He hasn't been there. We've never seen him. And he started acting basically like a grown-up, which isn't at all entertaining. And I started to get a little bit angry, and I thought about this, and then I realised two things. One, treating people like human playthings is probably wrong. And two, he must have a reason for being a fully rounded human being nowadays. And I realised that he did have a reason for being a fully rounded human being these days, and that reason's name was Sharon. And it's no words of mine can say how happy it makes Will, how happy it makes me and all his friends to see how happy Sharon makes him. That's the romantic. As I said at the top of the speech, I'm a comic, so as well as that giving me a sort of tendency towards lying when I'm talking in front of groups of people, it also gives me a tendency towards alcoholism. So it's with genuine relief, as well as with heartfelt pride, that I ask you all to charge your glasses and join me in a toast to the bride and groom, Will and Sharon.
Will and Sharon.
That's me done.